it's controversial, the whole Dr. Seuss thing. I mean, if you want my opinion on it, I'll give you my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter. It was just but I mean, it was just whoever owned the rights to the book said, you know what, this is not what we want anymore for this. The book.
I hope they don't get rid of all Dr. Seuss books. Are they just getting rid of some?
I don't know. I feel that some of it was, because I didn't read into it, and I don't necessarily read Dr. Seuss anymore or with my kids or whatever, but I always enjoyed Dr. Seuss. I think it had more to do with some of the work that he did with regard to presenting certain ethnic groups or racial groups in stereotypical ways with the tropes, like maybe the slant eyes for the Japanese. I have no idea. I do not know.
I mean, nobody should be ashamed of how they look. I mean, if somebody looks a certain way, they look a certain way.
Yeah.
But if it's doing it in like a mean, cruel way, you know. I mean, this is a controversial thing. I shouldn't give my opinion on that, but
I think that go ahead.
What's that?
Well, I was going to say I didn't follow all of it, but I think the main reason was because whoever was publishing or selling the books or had the rights to whatever they were thinking, this isn't good for the brand in our time. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull these particular titles from further published.
But honestly, I always like those books as kids, and I don't see them as. I know some controversy on and I always just kind of think of that. I was like, well, yeah, they got the one, Mr. Brown and Mr. Black, and the color, it's.
Yeah, I don't follow it much myself.
I think that it's the name of them, and I don't.
Yeah, well, it's like, for instance, I think if somebody said, what am I offended at? Like, this came up the other day. We were out to dinner with family, and some of my family said, what do you think about this whole thing with Dr. Seuss? And I said, and hear me out before you respond to this, because I will tell you what I said. I said, I love it. I said, on the one hand, I said, I think people ought to be able to do with what they want with whatever is their own property. Secondly, I love professional wrestling. I said, secondly, I love professional wrestling, because that's all this is. It's professional wrestling. I mean, on the one hand, a person or a business or a family ought to do with what they want with whatever they own. But on the other hand, this is all professional wrestling, because this is going to change in 5 to 10 years anyways. They might bring it all back. It just depends on what the direction is.
I mean, it's kind of old time anyway, but I mean, I don't. Some things I think people look too much into, and maybe there is something to it, but I really, honestly, me, and I'm horrible to ask. I really don't care.
Yeah, but see, because we're comedians in the sense of we have this thinking and a platform.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
Yes, exactly. Because I think we would tend to say, why? Wait, whoa, but because the average person is not a performer, an author, or a presenter, they are a reader, audience, and consumer, and they would say, hey man, it's just books, it's just comedy, it's just a joke. But and then there's the other person in the same room that says, that joke offended me. We need to ban those jokes. Instead of saying, no, wait a minute. Instead of banning jokes, why don't I ban myself from showing up to these comedy shows where I'm going to be offended?
Right.
I'll ban myself.
You don't like it. I mean, there needs to be a conversation without.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's where I am most animated, is when it comes to, okay, you do with your stuff what you want, but that's fine. But don't make it about, now if I disagreed with you, suddenly, as they say, I'm a Nazi, I'm a whatever I am. Because just disagreeing.
If somebody listens to me right now and say, well, I don't agree with what Brian said on that, we should ban him. And I'm afraid to get my opinion on something sometimes, because
there's stuff that I don't like people seeing on my old YouTube. I've actually deleted a couple of my old YouTube videos from 10 years ago.